Welcome to Postcards, a brief look at people, places, the arts and curiosities from around the world. On today's programme, 1,000 schoolchildren celebrate Tudor song and dance at Shakespeare's Globe Theatre. Boat lovers from around the world travel to Earl's Court for a spectacular exhibition. Princess Diana is remembered, this time in a wonderful children's playground with a Peter Pan theme. This year, for the first time, London will have a directly elected mayor. Our feature looks at modern changes in an ancient city. And something a little different, rare breeds of pigs and an ancient technique being used to help regenerate dying woodlands. But first up, a spectacular meeting of the new and the old. The $320 million superliner Aurora makes a grand entrance into her home port of Southampton as a fleet of sailing ships sweeps out. Just a few minutes earlier, inside the harbour, the 70 entrants in the Tall Ships 2000 race were making last-minute preparations for the 10,000-mile contest. The two-way transatlantic race has attracted barques, brigantines and cutters from around the world. Ships from 10 nations are taking part, and it's a challenging adventure for the young crews. One of the race rules require that 50% of all those aboard each ship have to be aged between 15 and 25. And given the venerable age of the ships, they all have a colourful history, like this tiny gaff-rigged sloop, the Jolly Breeze. The Jolly Breeze was built by the French in 1913 as a pilot cutter. An Englishman bought her, and it was he and some friends who decided on the offshore race around the Fastnet Rock. The Jolly Breeze duly won the inaugural race. Many of the tallest and most elegant Class A vessels are naval training ships. The Mir, built in Poland in 1987, is used to train cadets in St. Petersburg. The sirens sound, and watched by more than 100,000 spectators, the tall ship set off on the first leg to Cadiz in Spain. Then it's across to North America by way of Bermuda and back again to Europe. One of the first major international shows of the new millennium, the London Boat Show 2000, has also been dubbed one of the most spectacular boat exhibitions ever staged in Britain. With more than 1,000 different craft on display, this year's show has something for every type of boat and water enthusiast, as well as plenty of entertainment. So whether it's plain sailing or joining the Marines that takes your interest, this is just the place to find out everything you need to know. The idea, the organisers say, is to create a one-stop shop for boat lovers where they can spend money, ask questions or simply dream about the boats they long to own. This year there are boats priced from $480 through to well over $3.2 million. And there was certainly a lot of dreaming going on around one display. This is the boat driven by actor Pierce Brosnan in the opening sequence of the latest James Bond movie, The World Is Not Enough. And on the next display, just around the corner, is the boat that pursued him, creating chaos as they raced up the River Thames. 3 of the white boats were used to make the opening sequence, and none, the manufacturers assure us, were actually blown up. It was the most expensive scene ever shot, at around $1.6 million a minute, and was shot over a period of 5 months. But for those who enjoy a slightly more leisurely use of their time on the water, there were dozens of sailing boats, some up to 30 metres long, others on the shorter side. Or perhaps dinner for two in this $32,000 handcrafted wooden barge. The exhibition is open for 11 days. More than 17,000 visitors are expected to attend, with some 15,000 coming from overseas. The boat show is an important sales platform for the marine industry. At the last show, the 600 exhibiting companies generated sales of $107 million, a figure expected to be topped this year. The UK boating industry says boat sales within Britain are good, but with the strong value of the pound, exporting overseas is becoming increasingly difficult. But there are good markets in the Americas, Australia and Asia. It's taken a year to organise this year's event and to deal with all the logistical problems of getting the hundreds of boats from all over Britain and through the busy streets of London. Many of the larger boats spend days on the road. Police escorts were needed for 90 of the bigger boats. 500 had to be lifted by crane, while others were sailed up the Thames for part of their journey. This year's event also boasts the world's largest ever display of chandlery and a huge range of the latest trends in nautical fashion. It may be a pirate ship, but the crew is more likely to hand out jelly and ice cream than make anybody walk the plank. This 7-ton galleon, built in Germany, is a centrepiece of a $2.08 million playground to be dedicated to Princess Diana. The German manufacturers had made a prototype, and this ship consequently only took 6 months to complete. It was brought to England in 2 halves to be glued and riveted back together, and will lie at an angle surrounded by sand. She's one of 6 play spaces in the park, including a water play area, the Mermaid's Fountain, the wigwam camp complete with totem poles and mini wigwams, and a movement and musical garden. The theme of the park will be based around Peter Pan, because the author of the children's classic, J.M. Barrie, gave the money for the original playground. The Kensington Gardens playground, close to the Princess's former home, is set to open on July 1st, which would have been Diana's 39th birthday. London is about to get its first ever directly elected mayor and an elected assembly. Their daunting task to run this capital city of 7 million people. The Lord Mayor of London, riding in his gilded coach for the annual Lord Mayor's show, has no political power. The new Mayor of London will be very different. Since the demise of the Greater London Council, or GLC, in 1986, London has lacked a central authority. But this year, London will join the other capital cities of Europe in getting its own mayor and assembly. Among the areas the mayor will have responsibility for are environment and transport. Traffic congestion in the streets of central London graphically illustrates how these two issues are closely linked. 4 out of 5 of those who commute into London to work do so by public transport. London Underground estimates that £7 billion will be needed over the next decade to repair and modernise the network. How to raise this money is one of the major issues of the campaign. Above ground, the mayor will be trying to raise traffic speeds in the capital above the present 10 miles an hour by encouraging more people out of their cars and onto buses. The mayor will also control the budget for policing London. A survey last year found that crime was the top concern of Londoners. Almost a quarter of all crime in the UK happens here. London has some of the wealthiest and some of the poorest people in the country. Here are some of Britain's most expensive and some of its most dilapidated dwellings. While house prices in London have risen by a half in the last 3 years, way ahead of the rest of the country, there are nearly 40,000 families living in temporary accommodation. This sort of serious social problem will fall within the remit of the mayor and the Assembly to tackle, and many ordinary Londoners want to see improvements. St John's Wood, one of the wealthiest parts of London. Those living and working here have rather different priorities for the new administration when it takes power. A stiff list of priorities to tackle, some of them beyond the strict remit of the mayor. But experts say the powers of the mayor could well be tested by an energetic and ambitious local leader. London will be the biggest European city to have a directly elected mayor. Its economy dwarfs that of any other city in Britain. A fifth of the earnings of the country are made in London, which has an annual gross domestic product estimated at over £100 billion, or $160 billion US. London's business people are keen to see an elected mayor and assembly and have a clear idea of what they would like to see them do. Unlike many other city mayors in Europe and the United States, London's mayor will have little tax-raising powers to fund his responsibilities. But many expect that Londoners will inevitably face paying local taxes sooner or later.
Sì, in questo momento siamo ancora sul livello di 99,75. Ti può interessare?
Mais quand tu regardes sur Bloomberg, on vient de 15, de moins 15.
Whether that proves true in London won't be seen for some years. But voters will have many other issues in mind as they weigh up their choice on voting day.
On May the 4th, a London mayor will be elected. That person, with the London Assembly, will take on a huge range of responsibilities that will affect your day-to-day life. You live in London. Have a say in who runs it.
Music! Look, Nubs, shall they play for us? I would give gold to hear them play.
Shakespeare's Globe Theatre in London is resonating to the sounds of Tudor music, songs and dance. The cacophony of 1,000 school children is the culmination of 6 months' collaboration between Globe Education and 25 London schools. Through projects like this, the Globe is making sure it doesn't remain the preserve of theatre snobbery, but rather that it's a resource for the community to use, as it was in Shakespeare's time. These children are learning about the Tudor period in school, and this practical involvement is a vivid entree into the past. The fanfare, it's usually a blast of trumpet and bugles to provide a flourishing welcome for an important character. Shakespeare used it to herald royalty on stage. Today, the children of Southwark created their own fanfare to welcome fellow students into their theatre. With the costumes, language and theatrical flair, organisers say the educative process is definitely enhanced by being staged at the Globe itself. This is a space for which much of the music was written, and it gives them a sense of place and history. Globe Education has in the past run similar events, accessing school curricula through drama, but this has been the first foray into music. By all accounts, and the obvious enthusiasm of the participants, the experiment has been a resounding success. Japanese traders buying ivory in Namibia. An auction like this would have been unthinkable until February last year, when the United Nations body enforcing the decade-old ban on ivory sales agreed to a one-off sale of stockpiled ivory in Namibia, Botswana and Zimbabwe. Now these three countries, along with South Africa, hope to persuade the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species to allow another sale of stockpiled ivory when it meets in April. Environmental campaigners say that any weakening of the 1989 total ban on ivory sales would spark renewed poaching, which decimated elephant numbers in pre-ban days. Even the one-off sale last year, they claim, led to poaching. Environmentalists say seizures of poached ivory, like this one in Kenya last August, have sharply increased following the restricted sale in 1999. They deny that countries are losing out financially by being unable to sell ivory from their recovering elephant populations. This income, they say, will be put at risk if there is a return to the days when these magnificent creatures were hunted down in their thousands simply for their ivory tusks. Some British farmers may feel like a dying breed at present, but one West Yorkshire farm is ensuring that tried and tested traditions are preserved, embracing the future by reviving the past. An area of woodland near the farm is being revitalised using pannage, an age-old practice mentioned in the Doomsday Book, circa 1086. Rare breeds of pigs are being driven into the dying woodland to forage through the undergrowth, creating good conditions for the natural regeneration of trees from their own seed. The pigs belong to Home Farm, a rare breed centre on the Temple Newsome estate near Leeds. The 300-year-old farm is the largest approved centre of its kind in the world, home to more than 400 rare pigs, cattle, sheep, goats and fowl. The centre is sponsored by Leeds City Council and supported by the Rare Breed Survival Trust. It's another way of stopping the rare breeds becoming rarer, but it's also to bring public awareness to what the estate is doing. Rare breeds like these are renowned for their hardiness and their ability to survive without the use of medicines and other interventions by the farmer. Home Farm's management says you never know how useful such animals might be in the future. Relying on rare pigs like these to revive woodland in a cheap, efficient and environmentally friendly way is a practice that began at the turn of the last millennium, and one that's proving its worth once again in this one. Still on animals, but of the domestic kind. The Eurostar shuttle arrives from Paris at Folkestone in Kent. A grey day in southeast England, but an historic event nonetheless. The first animals to enter the country for more than a century without facing quarantine for 6 months were on board. 17 dogs and a cat, accompanied by their delighted owners. Mary Fretwell was particularly pleased. She's campaigned for 6 years to end the current restrictions. Every dog has his day, so the saying goes. There was just time for some canine refreshment before the owner interviews began in earnest. The British Agriculture Minister, Baroness Hayman, was responsible for bringing in the landmark legislation. She said the hurdles in the past had been about the inability to be certain of an animal's identification and the lack of an easily available effective vaccine against rabies. Now those things have changed. The scheme will be implemented throughout the UK by April next year, and there are plans to extend it further in the future. But for the moment, it was happy pets and owners, with a special thank you from the four-legged fraternity. Elsewhere, groups of youngsters are taking part in a new scheme to save endangered species at home and abroad. Think Global, Act Local That's the message from the Jungle Patrol. The project aims to encourage children in Britain to raise money for global conservation while learning about their own wildlife through a comprehensive study program.
You will get lots of
The humble bumblebee will be one of the first to benefit. In 20 years, the number of bee species in Britain has fallen from 16 to just 6. Further afield, more exotic creatures like these gorillas will benefit. It's estimated that there are only 600 mountain gorillas left in the forests of Central Africa. Besides the bee, other more unusual British creatures will be helped. Rare albino hedgehogs like this one, who was a great hit with the youngsters, are high on the list of species to be saved. It's easy to see why. Pond dipping was the order of the day at the launch of the scheme in central London, and wildlife experts helped the children to identify the creepy crawlies they found.
Okay, so what can you see in there when you look through?
Encouraging bird life is also an important part of the UK initiative. Carefully placed bird boxes increase the population by providing safe nesting places.
They usually go into the corners, so they're all around the edges. In fact, that corner's brilliant. And there's also
It's hoped jungle patrols will enable children to learn about conservation while having fun at the same time. And this little fellow certainly seemed to be thriving on all the attention. And that's all for today. Join us again next time for a postcard look at interesting people, places and the arts.